I find it kind of curious and wonderful that, except for the shot of Golda Meir in this film, it is very much the story of men.
Right.
And yet it is a female producer, a female director, and a female screenwriter, Sophie Sartain. Did you find that nice juxtaposition in making it?
Well, there was one other woman in the film, and it was the girl with the flowers, and actually was my daughter. So Jessica Katz got a little screen credit there. I think that the power of it being a strong female team is what brought out the emotion in the guys. I think part of that macho stuff fell away. They all talked about their mothers and their fathers. You can see Harold's eyes. He was still crying that he was such a failure to his father. And then he finally got his father's approval. And they were all affected by their moms. So I think that they let their guard down with us. And so, and I don't think there's any topic a woman can't tackle. This wasn't necessarily my area of expertise, warbirds and pilots, but you learn a lot. And, when you study something, it really can become fascinating. And I know how many propellers are on a Messerschmitt now. Don't ask me, don't ask.
But actually, for me, the question of research is very interesting. I have to confess that I knew so little about this story, and it's not that I know much about anything but film history anyway, but I was fascinated by all that I learned. I mean, that there would have been no Israeli Air Force, essentially, had it not been for the volunteers. Could you tell us a little about the research that you did in addition to the first-hand interviewing of these wonderful guys?
Well, after I read the obituary, I started to read books. So I read a book called No Margin for Error. I read a book called The Pledge by Leonard Slater, which talked more about the clandestine operations that went on here in New York, and it was just great. I read My Brother's Keeper. I started to pick up books that the pilots themselves had written that they had self-published. They were crappy, but crappily written, but they were great stories. And then my lawyer in Israel is a friend of Shimon Peres, and he said, do you want to meet Shimon Peres? Because he was very close to Al Schwimmer. He was there in Burbank with him. And I sat with Shimon Peres in December of 2011. And a 45-minute session turned into an hour and a half with them pounding on the door for the next guy to come in. But he was lost in his memories. And he started to tell me stories of the whole operation, how he was sent there, what happened with Al Schwimmer. So all the first-hand accounts you get are so powerful. And I just continued reading everything. Google is your best friend. And then I also went to the World Machal website. And there are personal stories that many of these Machalniks have written over the years, and they're fantastic. Wow. And that really just, rounded out the whole thing.
I confess that when I first saw the film a few months ago, I thought to myself, did they get Shimon Peres directly for this little documentary that they were making? The second time I saw it, it was clear to me that he was talking directly to the heart of your film. And I do trust everything else that follows a little bit more, because this extraordinary statesman is telling me, yeah, they were dancing in the streets, but David Ben-Gurion said to me, tomorrow there'll be spilled blood. Right. And of course, everything happened in that way, and he really does provide a solidity.
Yes, a lot of credibility, and he's an incredible speaker. Yeah. So I really want to take some of his words and change them. I wish he said volunteers instead of volunteers, but that's okay, because we get it.
I always find it a reminder. We all think that English is enough, because we were all in America very, blasé and selfish, and we don't think we need to learn other languages. But I like to be reminded that everywhere else, it's an effort for people whose native language was not English to master the one that we all take for granted.
The funny thing is, when he was chosen to come here, I think it was by Ben-Gurion, he was up for the job. He was a kibbutznik. He was up for the job against another guy. He had no education. This other man spoke English, was highly educated, and they turned to Shimon Peres and said, you're perfect for the job, you're going to America. And he came here and he didn't speak any English. I think he took classes at the New School, and he learned English. So really made quite an effort, and look what happened.
And how. In this film, we see how important the port of Gaza was. It was crucial. The war ended when the Egyptians were encircled there in the Gaza Strip. I couldn't help but feel that I need to raise the question, how do you see the situation now in Israel, especially having immersed yourself in this particular history?
Well, in immersing myself in this history, one thing that hit me right away was that originally the partition was a two-state solution, and that the Jews in Palestine accepted it and the Arabs rejected it. And I can't help but think the what if it had been accepted back then. So I don't, bottom line is that I think Israel has a right to defend itself, but nobody wants to see a people suffering and innocent people, being murdered, or killed, whether it's in a war, fair or not fair. I don't have answers. I think two-state solution is the answer, but how to do that, how to separate, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,